Hi, I'm Heinbach. It's good to have you back. Welcome to Patron Q+A number 14, where I answer questions that are sent to me by the good people that support what I do on Patreon. If you want to get a question in, just subscribe to any tier there and post a question, one per person, in the sticky thread that I put there every month. And before I start, thanks to everybody who bought and played and shared the music that they did with the new plugin I developed together with Audio Thing called Motor. I love hearing what you do with it. It just makes me incredibly happy to have a part in how you create music. So please keep doing that. It really makes me happy. On with the questions. Mute City. Your music has a very wide frequency range, and you often use sources with really deep and rumbly bass. I'm curious how you do your mixing. Not the creative side of mixing, but the basic, make it translate consistently across different sound systems. Primarily on monitors or headphones, different kinds, or a pair that you know really well? Do you play it back on many different systems in different rooms? Do you use any room equalization software? Have you acoustically treated your room, and how much of a difference did that make? There's a lot of questions in there. From a technical side of mixing, experience is the best thing, and access to huge, well-tuned theater PAs was one of the most influential thing for me. Because, my main job for the longest time is working on soundtracks for theater. So I always had access to finely tuned multi-speaker setups in German theaters from large to small. And that's taught me really how to mix. Because when you are there, you play the track, everybody's listening, like 10 actors, sound staff, directors, and it sounds bad, you will feel that hard. So I got good at mixing fast due to the psychological pressure of that, and also the simply full range that was available to me. You might say it's hard to get something to sound good on a phone, but compared to running it through a theater PA, that's a different thing. So you can hear all your errors, and you'll get like looks from the sound stuff that are like, And it's like, I'm gonna work on this. Give me a moment. And also you can learn so much from the people that work there, because some of them are very accomplished mixers. So that definitely helped me in learning how to mix. Secondly, when I mix at home, I've been using Adam P11 speakers for most of my life, and I switched to Head 20s. Really good. I really like them. They've got the similar powerful sound as the Adams, except more range, bigger speakers. I can run them, at lower volume. So I don't have to pump them as much to get a good feel out of them. And then I've got an Auratone 5C, the classic one, no copy, that really helps with getting the mid-range information right. And that helps it translate across systems, because these are a quasi-standard. And then you could, the room, of course. I had it treated myself. Behind me are dope traps. You can Google that. It's thermal hemp, 5 layers thick, and stuck into basically frames. That was good. And then I had a Basotect for the early reflections with the mirror method of standing here and then looking where the reflections, or where I can see the monitors. So I put up the things there. Was okay, but then I had my room professionally treated by Kiss Your Ears, and you can see their bass traps up there, and there's a video to come. I just need to find the time to finish that, about the whole process. And these are all King Kong bass traps, and they put them up in the corners, so I've got enough space down here because I need that. And now the room is just, it's very, very good. Very, very good now. So there are things that after listening to my music in the treated room, I thought, okay, I would love to redo this. And it's stuff like that I made mixes too dry. Fits, my throat is dry too. So bit of coffee. I made mixes too dry because the room would add more reverb and space. So That's a little more space. That's could be useful for the mix to translate elsewhere. And then not enough bass, because the room would amplify bass frequencies. And then when you would hear it in another system, there would not be enough bass. Now, that's basically all fixed. And that's such a relief. And it makes it so much easier for me to hear mixes in here, and also for other people when they come in. Like when I had a friend over and he had heard the room before, and he said I couldn't make any judgments because I didn't know the room, and it sounded like a room, not like a space, like a treated space. And then he thought, oh no, I can hear it directly, I can hear it good. It's not something, you don't have to invest as much learning time into a space. Okay. Third, headphones. I'm not a fan of headphone mixing at all. I use them to check stuff. I love jogging with my earplugs in and checking the mixes because I listen to a lot of podcasts, sometimes even music on my in-ears, just cheap ones. So, but it's good for checking, but I don't love producing with them. I always, even when I was on the road, I like to bring little speakers with me because less ear fatigue. But one pair of monitors, headphones changed that. The headphones by Head. They're in the other room now because I have them permanently in that space because that's completely untreated. So I rely on headphones to get a good mix. And those comically huge headphones, they make pretty good mixes. I did a bunch of stuff over there on the Surge. And it translates so well. I'm so happy about these headphones. So these are something to consider if you only have headphones. I know they're super expensive, but I found them to be really worth it. It's like wearing speakers on your head, and it's as heavy. So like production-wise, if you do this, it's not good for your neck. But these are perfect for when you want to like, okay, check the mix and balance and you're up straight. Then it's good. Not so great for like, production movements, but absolutely fantastic else. So those changed my attitude to headphones quite a bit. And then the other thing is the whole process of mixing for me. Is basically a way to make everything sound good easily. And that goes from the analog mixer to the bus compressor, to the bus limiter, to the bus EQ, to the tape that I'm recording to. All this chain is something I mix into. And that makes the sound finished and helps automatically make it sound more rounded and well balanced. But with mixing, of course, there's so much more to learn. And it's like, your first 10,000 mixes are hard and the next 10,000 too. So it's always a balance. And in the whole committing to just a stereo mix, which I love doing, I had moments where I had to fix stuff. And luckily, there are multiple tools available to fix the worst errors, but it also helped me get better fast at mixing because I made big errors that sometimes were unfixable. So learn, move on. I hope this helps. Raymond Finzel, follow-up question. It's a struggle sometimes to get the mix right, especially on tunes where I'm experimenting with bass sounds from various sources. Yeah, that's one thing. If you've got an electric bass, or an acoustic bass for that matter, that is already tuned to be exactly in the place where it should be. Somebody spent a lot of time to make this instrument so it fits in. And when you're experimenting with bass sounds, they don't care. So you have to decide how to mix that. It helps to think of even your experimental sounds as how would they fit into an orchestra or like a band. So you've got your bass. What's the bass signal doing? Where's it supposed to hit? Think about that. Is it supposed to be more into the Fenderish region here? Or is it like a deep noise, like a Wagner tuba or something? Or like a big kettle drum or something? what would be the real life equivalent? And when you start imagining your electronic sounds like that, they start to fall into places and into ranges. I hope this helps. Zach Steinkamp. Is your most popular music that you've released also your favorite of what you have made? What is your favorite or most proud release on Spotify now, and why? I think the most popular release right now is the track called The Guide, which I'm actually very proud of because it was the first track that I did when everything went into lockdown. And it was the guiding track for the whole record Assertion. And I'm so happy that this receives so many listens and people enjoy it because it's very pure, very simple, piano, synths, blooper, I think. And is that all? Probably. It's very simple, very direct. And it was for me a way out of the crises. So I'm absolutely proud of that. I don't have much music I'm not proud of, actually, except maybe for some commercial work, because that's usually forgettable, made by design. And then there's other things that I just didn't finish. So then I don't have a reason to be proud of it. Loving Schwebungssumme. When you're composing, how much traditional music theory are you using? Do you have a foundation in this in your education? I had Satzlehre in university. And I studied the quintet circle, the circle of fifths, and I studied all that in school and in my spare time. So I have a lot of Western music background and some from other cultures because always interested, and nothing inspires me more than ideas, even more so than listening to other people's music. Ideas are often the thing that kicks me. And there's simple things that I employ, like harmonies, harmonic change to get tension and stuff. And that's all there. And I don't talk about it so much because it's all subconscious for me. And I don't want to think about it too much. I just tend to do it. When I think about chords, I oftentimes have to think of them in more simple terms than if I would just play piano, because there I always love the most complex chords, where the naming system becomes completely irrelevant, nonsensical, because you get all these additions, so it's not even clear what it is, because in the end you make tone clusters, tone colors. So when I employ that with electronic instruments, I tune down the chords because oftentimes the texture takes up so much of these overtone structures that I don't have to work with complicated chords because, the sounds in themselves add all the harmonies. Jacob Stevens. I wonder if you could please share your thoughts on cultural appropriation. For example, I really love the tone and alternative tuning systems of the Balinese and Javanese gamelan. I'd love to use gamelan in my tracks, but I don't want to come across as stealing or simply using exotic sound as a gimmick. I know that the culture and context of musical traditions arose over thousands of years, and I want to respect that. But also I think the sharing of new ideas is what makes art flourish. Well, I think there's two ways to approach this. There's one thing that Tantacruel made a fantastic video about, and that's called reification. And I'm going to put the link up here, and please do check that out. And there he makes examples of how exotic music is used in documentaries and stuff to denote alienness. It's cliché. It's dead. It's just this one thing, just one idea. It's become reified. As an artist, at least for me, one of the most important things is to engage in conversation. So when I, for example, went to Bali, I visited 2 performances on gamelan and was absolutely fascinated. But what fascinated me even more than the sound of the instrument was the hierarchy within the whole orchestra. Who did what? Who does what? Why is this guy hitting only the stick, but he's next to the orchestra leader? What does all this signify? And to learn more about that, I actually bought the Sonic Couture library, which I used to study more about that. And once I had studied all that, I found myself using rhythmical patterns or rhythmical ideas from that in the modular, for example, or using effects and using these layers of moving patterns. But I didn't actually use the library in any way to just make music with that and try to be a gamelan. It's more like taking these ideas and creating something new out of that. You can't close the world to yourself as an artist. And as long as you engage in something and you not just take something, plunk it in a track, and then go on with it because you say, okay, I want this to sound Asian. So you plunk a bit of gamelan in there, and then it's done, and then it can sell you aftershave. I love playing the mbira, and one of the books that I can always recommend is The Soul of Mbira, where it goes into the way that this is played, where it's actually a conversation between a father, a mother, and a child, which is completely different to any form of Western musical tradition, but that makes it so absolutely inspiring. And that concept translated to anything from electronic music to piano playing to instrument design has been super important for me. And when I made music with the mbira, I got feedback from people from South Africa where that instrument came from, where I commissioned it to be built. And they wanted to use it in a soundtrack for a documentary about a tree in a township in Johannesburg. And you can watch that video here. So taking and playing an instrument from a different culture in a way that I think works for me, that music was rediscovered by that culture and appreciated and reintegrated into that culture. So that was one of the most amazing things. And there comes another thing. Like when I would try to work with something like a gamelan or with, I don't know, even an alphorn, something that's not so far away from where I'm from, I would really like to study that instrument. I would like to engage in the conversation. And if I wrote an alphorn piece, I would want people that play the alphorn to appreciate that piece. I would not just have that make it to sell chocolates or something. I want that to be part of, I want to become of the narrative of that world, of the instrument. So I think that's the way I as an artist see it, and how you can be open to the world. It's all about the respect and the culture. All cultures. I hope that answers your question. Phil Durant has got a follow-up to that. Have you read the article in the link I will include? The article encourages us to explore non-Western scales and rhythms and says that most software pushes us to traditional Western harmonic and rhythmic system. Yes, decolonizing electronic music starts with its software. That was an interesting article. I remember reading that. And check that out. I'll put a link in the description. It is, you look at Ableton and you look at all these, any DAW, and it's all this 12-tone thing. And it's all colored in this way. And to break that up and to get free from that, that is absolutely what I personally love and why I'm living in a world of constantly free tuning systems and multi-rhythms that are both human yet very much machine. Liam Freiwald, what are some of your organizational tips when it comes to hardware music setups? How to layer it and organize gear, cable management tips, and the like. Keep it all in shape. Don't have anything lying around that's not working. Take that out and replace it. Get it repaired fast. Don't have any dead things around. Doesn't work. But I'm going to do a little class on that at Keys and Frequencies this weekend. It's an event by Thomann, and you can just tune in. I called it Islands because I've got all these little setups here, and I'm going to talk a bit about them in more detail on that live stream. Tune in there, and I'll probably answer your question there again and in more detail right now because, I still need to prepare my answer for that. Paul Regni. I came across a forum where you're asking advices about Patchbay. I'm struggling to install mine in my room. Basic balanced Neutrik Patchbay. It brings what I think are ground loops issues I didn't have before. I have only vintage units like Tascam 424 as a mixer, Roland R8 and Microboot as main instruments and guitar pedals for effects. Those are all unbalanced units, and I'm guessing this might be part of the problem. That and the cables needed to wire everything. Or am I completely wrong? I assume you have similar unbalanced units, and I was wondering if you managed to get away with that 50 Hz hums when you installed your Patchbay. all the stuff that runs into my Patchbay, I think is, yeah, it's all symmetrical. I think I have the same Patchbay. It's the cheapest Neutrik one. And all the stuff I have in there is actually symmetrical. There's no unbalanced signals going in, unless you count like stuff I use for inserts into the mixer. So I keep this Patchbay completely symmetrical. I don't patch anything else in there because everything else goes into the instrument or line inputs into my mixer. And the one thing that I always do is to keep cables short. So if I go longer, I employ the iBoxes. But yeah, if you get grounding issues, you probably are mixing signals that are not meant to be mixed in that way with symmetrical, unsymmetrical. But I am not an expert with that. Really, I'm not the technical guy for that. I can't really help you with that. I'm sorry. Trey Milner, I was wondering what your experience has been with getting your music pressed onto vinyl. What company did you go through? What was the upfront cost? What would you recommend? Labels do that. I never bothered to do that myself. I've only worked with labels in that regard. Seil Records uses Randmusik in Leipzig, and they've been absolutely fabulous for everything so far. But really, no pressing plant has been bad. And the one that we used for Assertion, Vinyl RP, they've also been great. So I don't have anything where I think that's a bad pressing plant. Yeah. But yeah, you might want to check out Jogging House and ask him. Like, he's also got a Patreon, and ask him. And he's got a very lovely Patreon with a very nice community. So, like, if you've got specific label questions, he probably can help you better with that. Michael, I have a 7-year-old daughter who asked me to give her some instrument as her next birthday present. She already owns a toy piano and an acoustic guitar, but this time she asked me when playing around with a plumbeter. So I guess the imagines something experimental. Ah, yes. Okay, so I think, yeah, I answered that quickly because I didn't know when the birthday was. Blipbox and Data Duo are two kid-ready synthesizers, and no headphones with those, no headphones with any of these. I think it's bad for the ears to, use headphones with kids because of the noises that can put out of synthesizers, and headphones are wearing anyway. So don't use them with headphones. Use them with speakers at a decent volume. But yeah, Blipbox and Data Duo, and I think Bo Beats. He made a review for these machines. I don't know for both, but he had tested them with his kids. And yeah, that's a video I can encourage you to check out and see what he says. Dimitri Shiperda. I was wondering. I have a family with children. They need time and attention in Corona classes. Oh yeah. And I have some busy tech job. I don't have enough time to make music, let alone make videos about it, answer people's questions, do gigs, find neat lab equipment, try it out, fix it, tweak it. I couldn't possibly Heinbach, I tell myself. You are Heinbach. How do you do it? How do you combine being an inspirational father, I hope, an inspirational musician, YouTuber, teacher? Is it time management? Is it lots of energy, good sleep, booze? I don't have another job than this. This is music is my job. And now thanks to, Patreon and all of you, I can keep exploring the meta side of things. And I don't have to be away as much. So I can be more with the family, and I can hunt for all these things. But it's all thanks basically to doing what I do. Talking on YouTube, putting out music, and sharing all this stuff. So I've worked as a professional musician for the longest time, so I never had a real job. Also, a real, like my parents would think of as a real job. I always been this kind of artist figure. So, but now I'm an artist figure that has a monthly regular income, which was absolutely life-changing for me. So the main reason I can do all this is Patreon, and that means you. So I don't have the busy tech job that you have. And if I had a different job, like a job extra on top, I wouldn't know where to start. The only thing that I would then do is patch up my Modular, make some tunes, chill, and let that be done. So it's just use music to relax and not to not as obsessively mad that I'm about it, because working a full-time job and having kids and being a good father and husband and everything requires a lot of attention. And when you're deeply into music, that also takes a lot of attention from you. Edward Ball. When me and Ben had you on as a guest on esoteric modulation, we got to ask you lots of great questions, but I find myself needing another Heimbach-focused functional fix of facts and tips. I'm about to build a Music Thing modular magnetophone module, and I've been meaning to do this for a few years now. DIY projects, it takes some time. After having a quick chat with Tom a few years ago, he suggested using 1/4 inch mono tape for the best results with it. Do you know of any tape machines that can record 1/4 inch mono on all tape lanes in one direction, so I can use the tape's bandwidth fully for the magnetophone tape head, instead of the usual half tape one way and half tape in the opposite direction? I want to record source material all the way if possible. I was thinking of getting the UR report for 4000 monitor at some stage. That wouldn't do it. Mono UR wouldn't also not do it. No. So the URs are in fact mono, but they're also mono two-way. So they record both ways, so you can flip it. So those wouldn't do. You could get a Nagra. A mono Fulltrack. The 4.2 and the Nagra 3 and the Nagra 4 and the Nagra 4D. Those are the models that you can look out for. Of these, the Nagra 3 has the most mojo, but of course it's the oldest one and thus the most susceptible to not working anymore. 4.2, super reliable, and many people can still fix that. So that would be like my safe choice. But for mojo, the 3. And you can also get an E, but that doesn't have vari speed, so you're losing out on something there. But yeah, the Nagras are the machines to do that, because there are not so many Fulltrack recorders on there. These are professional machines, because all the consumer machines, they cared more about playtime than the highest audio quality. And Nagra was meant to be, broadcast. And there, like even 7.5 IPS was like, it's not so good. We need to go the full speed of 19 IPS. So, the Nagras, that's what you should look into. And I'm sorry, because those are very expensive, but those are the best for that. And that's also what I use in my destruction loops, because the mono machines allow for this. You don't get like these surprises where suddenly you still hear the signal on another channel, or to flip around and you hear a different signal. So I would go for the Nagra and get whatever model you can afford. They're actually still pretty cheap in Germany. Like a 4.2 will set you back between 1,000 and 1,200 euro, and the 3 between 600 and 800 euro. Carl Miller. You regularly use guitar pedals with your synth to great effect. Do you have a typical signal flow when you use pedals, and how do you deal with the difference in line level versus instrument level impedance and gain? Bonus question. Any pedals you're particularly excited about right now? I don't deal with the gain thing, because in the end I've got a mixing board where everything runs through, and that has plenty of gain. So I really don't care about line, and most pedals that I use sound good driven, like especially the old stuff, because now I have phasers everywhere, and I'm obsessed with the Morley Pro phaser, and I have 2? Yeah, only 2. I thought I had 3. And the old Small Stones, and I have them on all the synthesizers. They have got 1 phaser each. I love them. So, so I don't deal with any level thing. And pedals that I'm really excited about are, of course, Morley Pro phaser. Big one. Love it. Ancient. Sounds great. And there's some new stuff that I'm checking out that's just sent into me. This is the King Spark. And this is a model, a crazily overdriving modded Tube Screamer thing, which I'm really looking forward to check out. And I also got the new Glue Glue Loop. And this promises to be one of the most amazing looper pedals. It's huge, because this is built on, the guy's a real fan of the Echoplex, which is basically the looper behind the whole Looper's Delight forum, as far as I know. So I'm really looking forward to give this a good run through. Troy Alden, aka Windphone. I was enjoying your new Eurex setup video and was wondering how you would go about multitracking something like this. Would you track individual voices into a DAW and make some variation of each voice to edit together, or simply make a whole track and do your composing on the fly, just recording a stereo signal to do some mastering and polish in the DAW to then put it out into the world? The latter. I just do it like that, because as I mentioned before, the whole process is designed to give me a good sound from a stereo source and then don't bother anymore with that. So that's how I do it. I used to multi-track my modular, like 8 tracks into the interface, mix it there, which can yield some great clean results, but the whole process gives me tendonitis. So stereo all the way. But then again, you can just use these. You don't need output modules. You can, if you want to multi-track, just plunk in little cables where you want the signal to go out, and then go into a mixer if you need to bring the levels down a bit, or if your interface doesn't have pads or overdrives. Jan Levot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but except Coco Quantus and OP1, tape loops do not count. You seem not a great fan of regular samplers. Have you ever used this type of gear? I'm curious to know your feeling about the use of samplers in ambient tracks, and why, for example, you do not sample your test equipment gear. Is it because of the fun of live tweaking knobs? I sampled my test equipment gear for the library with Spitfire, so I sampled it when there was money involved. No, but honestly, I don't need to sample anything because I prefer to stay with the units in the room. So I just play them like this, and that's where the fun comes from. And I don't need to then add a sampled version of that. But what I found is that all the sample packs that I make for you guys just absolutely helps when I construct the track in the digital audio workstation, because then I've got all these sounds I can just plug in there, and it's a crazy good archive of sounds. How many gigabytes are there now? So that's something that I find absolutely cool now. So I've sampled a lot, lots of sample packs, tons of them. And I use them now myself for little projects and making tracks inside the DAW, especially, for example, when I test my plugins and stuff like that. And there's even, there's a track that is completely made in the DAW with these samples out in summer. So this will be... It does happen that I sample, but not in the way that I throw it into Ableton Simpler. I think that's about the level of complexity that I personally can handle inside a sampler. And yeah, that's not something that I do much, because I tend to work outside of the box mostly, or then use the crazier sound machines and plugins that you don't get any equivalent for in analog in the DAW. I found that myself and Groovebox samplers like the Digitech don't get along. I just find it not inspiring to work like that. The OP1 sampler is pretty much perfect because it's simple, direct, and just works for me. And if I want sampled sounds, I've got libraries that I can use if I need to. I used them in the past a lot, now I don't. Yeah, but samplers themselves never held that much of a allure for me, but I think that's mainly because I could do all the audio manipulation that I wanted to do inside an audio track in an audio workstation. I could just cut it up, splice it, effect per little splice, and do all of that. So I never saw the need to throw something in a sampler, I think. Yeah, it's not like a active choice, but I felt like with the editing possibilities of Cubase back in the time, I was doing a lot of the stuff that you could do with samplers in a way that for me seemed more fun. We were editing, chop it up, and yeah. So that's why I'm not so much into more complex samplers. Simo Antere. My first question is about metal music. You said in some past video that you were a fan of metal music when you were younger. What kind of metal and what bands did you listen to? You still like some metal? If so, does any metal influence your music in any way? I considered Schwebungssumme to be exceptionally heavy album from you and kind of heard some similarities with it and metal. I love it. Oh, that's great to hear. Oh, metal. Yeah, I listen to fantasy metal. I liked Blind Guardian. That was a band I really enjoyed because at the same time I was reading AD&D novels. Never played it, but I read like Forgotten Realms books, Curse of the Azure Bonds, Pool of Radiance, and all that. So that fit that world perfectly. And then Maiden and Metallica. And of the two, I think I preferred Maiden a lot. And Fear of the Dark, particularly. Amazing track. Just like, yeah, I remember sitting in the night with my headphones in my bed and just listening to I'm not gonna sing, don't want to get copyright on this, but this is really, really influential music at the time. The last records that I really listened to with joy was from Ghost, the debut album, I think, of them. That's this pop metal, which seems like Beatles doing black metal, or black metal does Beatles. And then Haunt was another one that I bought on cassette, and I loved that. So this popish metal thing, and I got my kids hooked on baby metal. I really loved the first, like when they were really this blast black metal style. So I enjoyed baby metal and watching that with them and listening to that with them. So I haven't really been active in that whole world. It's it's just something that shaped my musical world. Sean Schray. I'm interested in Fundamental and using it on an iPad. What would you suggest as far as iPad model, specs plus I/O gear to use as an instrument? I absolutely love the Babyface Pro with my iPad. When I put these two together, I realized, wow, I've got a high quality, a high-end studio here. And the Total Mix software, which can be a bit Byzantine at first, when you have touch control over it, is so powerful. It's glorious. So that changed the iPad from something I'm just jamming on the sofa with to a proper full-on music creation studio. So Babyface Pro, absolutely amazing. And I love the 2019 iPad Air. That absolutely worked for many things. Also, that still had like a headphone jack. I had to pass that on to my daughter so she could use it for school, for Zoom and her lesson programs. So now I've got the newer one, the M1 Air, and I haven't really tried it with music yet because I need a new adapter cable for the Babyface Pro, which is kind of stupid. But that is blazingly fast. So I've no doubt that it will work nicely with music. And I don't know, but there's a whole, probably some of the viewers can answer that better than me who are more into that. If there's still an advantage to getting the Pro iPad versus one with the new M1 chips, or if it's worth waiting a bit until the Pro also has those new M chips. I'll pass that on to the audience. I think that's all for this one. Thank you all very much for asking. This was an exciting one. All these questions are deep, and probably I could make videos on half of them. Totally. Thank you. Thanks to all of you who support what I do on Patreon. You are the reason I can keep on making these videos. So I'm going to roll credits with all your names. And I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye.